so that's not something you can pick up. The state of Indiana allows anybody, not just municipalities or counties, farmers, any kind of business that operates equipment that travels the road, and you pay taxes on that equipment, and the fuel doesn't, and the fuel is a shared fuel tank, so a dump truck. You're using the hydraulics that are powered from the engine, and that fuel isn't being used to wear out the road. So there's a proportion of that, and there's a proportion of rate that comes back to the, in this instance, the county, for the fuel that goes into a dump truck, or into a salt spreader, or would also be included is public transportation. You have a veterans van, that would be allowable to be picked up. But what we're really looking at is that the highway department's going to make or break the project. Anything beyond that is icing on the cake, so to speak. So the proposal we have right now is to start with the current period, which would be the second quarter of 2018, and prepare all the paperwork and submit that to the Indiana Department of Revenue. And only when you get paid, when the Department of Revenue cuts that check, that we would invoice the county half of whatever was billed, up to $1,500. Also included, and this is one of the, I think one of the key services that we provide, is not just filling out the form, it's not just educating folks, it's audit defense. Pardon me. The data that's required to be submitted, we would provide audit defense. The Indiana Department of Revenue would ask any questions, and certainly the Indiana State Board of Accounts. So, in a nutshell, that's what we're proposing today. Any questions?
Yeah, we noticed quite a drop in our wheel tax.
Yes.
Do you also do that? Is that included in this?
No, this is only for diesel and unleaded gasoline that goes that you pay tax on now. So you don't pay sales tax, but you pay this excise tax, and that's what.
I didn't know if you did a separate auditing thing for that or not. We just receive a check, you know, from the license that you purchase in the county. And
sure.
I assume we receive a check with little explanation as to where the license came from or the number of fees.
Well, we get our information from two sources. We get the money from the state, and then the BMV sends us a file that tells us who actually paid those fees. So then we apply, we spread it around and make sure it goes to the right tax and
I think we're down about $100,000 right now. I met with Jeremy a month or so ago. I guess I'm off the subject.
Well, I'd love to pull that rabbit out of the hat for you, but realistically, I think what you're looking at is, pardon me, and what we've seen in similar counties is about $3,000 a quarter. Now that might be different. I mean, we need to look at what you're doing and how you're doing it, but it's not going to fill that gap. So one of the things that, in addition to the audit defense, we try to look, when we go into a client, when we have you as a client, we look at everything possible to optimize the revenues that are coming back. In particular, when we look at the highway department, again, that's going to be our number one, that's where we're going to make our money together. Those funds get deposited back into the highway fund. So now, the veterans van, that would probably go back to the general fund and get lost in there. But anything else now, I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at other departments. But again, it's going to be that highway department that's going to be where the opportunity is, at least for the last 12 months. And I'd have to say right now, we're working with Mayor Barton on the pilot project for the city on this particular one, and there's opportunity there. Certainly with the ambulances it's a different animal, but we're doing something very similar there, and it's very, actually it's very worthwhile to see, get involved with this for us, to see this money coming back that folks didn't know was out there.
Do you have a copy of the proposal you leave with our attorney today, Charles?
Well, I have two things, and yes, I have the proposed agreement, and not necessary to have that, certainly, again, take your time and attorney look it over. I've done my best to make it exactly that, as close to a handshake as possible. One thing that we do ask is that we have the Department of Revenue power of attorney form. This is very limited, specifically just to this form. You can, the Indiana Department of Revenue, you can get a power of attorney to answer any questions. We don't want to answer any questions. We only want to answer if we work this, if we go into business together, this is the only thing we want to work on. So I do have those two. And it's the fourth page
I guess I just want to understand what we're doing today, and, you know, I mean, if we're buying tanker loads of fuel, we can't do that many loads that we aren't turning in together. I'd like to know what we're doing before we do something.
Right, yeah, I don't think that we have any intentions probably to do any action today. Charles, I had met with Charles on several occasions. He said he does work for us as far as the fire department and Medicaid reimbursement, which is a lot larger scale than what we're talking about with fuel tax. And also, he was a vendor at the Commissioners Conference we had a chance to talk to, and he said he would like to come and just give us a proposal on what he could do for us, and that's why I kind of asked for Dan to have an opportunity to look these over and see if there's anywhere where we are leaving money on the table that would be worthwhile to go after.
And I also want to add one thing in particular about the folks at the Highway Department. This program is not publicized. I accidentally stumbled across, I think it was in the city of Fishers, where the fleet manager was talking about filling out this crazy form, and that was about 2 years ago. So this is not publicized by anyone, certainly at the state level. So I don't want to throw stones at the Highway Department. They got enough going on, and certainly what we want to do is partner with them and the other departments to get this started. So, you know, beyond this 1 year that the taxes are the highest, let's look at going forward, but that's in there and we can evaluate that going forward. But again, the Highway Department, they're doing their job, it just, the word's not out.
Yeah.
And I'll make a motion we take the proposal under advisement pending review of our attorney, discussion among the commission.
Second. Have a motion and a second to take the proposal under advisement. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So what we'll do, Charles, is we'll let Dan review them, and then you guys have any questions after today, feel free to get hold of Charles, or you can get hold of Dan and he'll talk to you. So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very good.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on is to Wellbrook. I think they just exited that way to come around this way, but we'll see if that's them. It shows up in a minute. I believe that's who it is.
It's not.
It's not? Okay.
Somebody over here.
Anybody here from Wellbrook? It was perfect timing. I just thought that was going around. Okay. What were they wanting?
Well, you got to call and share.
Okay. Let's just,
Or wait.
yeah, we're just waiting if they call back and want to do it, or like I said, if you talk to them, tell them we need somebody to come to the meeting.
They had no, there was no specific date.
It's kind of a open thing.
It's a different request than you had before, and I did ask them to come and.
Right. So if they call back, or if you want to call and say, you know, if you want to proceed with this, we need somebody to come to the meeting. Moving on to the next is Resolution 2018-9, and I turn it over to Dan.
Yes, this resolution would begin the process of seeing whether there are companies that would want to rehabilitate their Ben Hur Building. And we have received some interest from a rehabilitation company, so we think this might be the time. As you recall, you've done this once before, this is the preliminary resolution which you declare that you have this property from tax sale and you'd like to see whether there are persons who would be willing to submit a proposal to you for the possible transfer of that property to them. It's merely the first step. This resolution envisions that you would have a public hearing on that matter on July 23rd of this year. Companies would be required to present to you those submissions with detailed information of what they would do with the property and how and why before that time. It's about a three-step process, so this is just step number one to say, let's see what's out there. If you find a proposal you like, you have to have a confirmatory resolution and then one final step after that. So this just begins that, but since we have a company that has said that they are willing to do this, this would start that process.
This time I'd entertain a motion for resolution 2018-9.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dan, what is the approximate time frame of this whole process of the three steps? I know there's not a definite answer when you're talking legal side, but approximate, how long are we anticipating?
Well, if everything went well, you would have your public hearing the 23rd. You could approve the submission at that time, but if you needed more time to consider it and it fell back to your August timetable, if you approve a submission with a final resolution, then you have to negotiate the terms of the development agreement, which really is under what terms would the county transfer the property to the not-for-profit. And so I really think that you're probably looking at a September final approval, October. And then again, these historic rehabilitations are tied to that funding cycle. So they'll want to know this fall so they can get their funding in that cycle, which I think is a February cycle.
Question, gentlemen?
We are getting the building back.
We already got the building back, unfortunately.
All right. So we do have some time here, this is step one, but some time here to see what the best uses of that building could be.
Right, this is really to see if anybody has any interest in using it for something else. Maybe the answer to no.
As Dan said, we have been at least aware of one that is interested. I have met with the gentleman on 2 different occasions. Seem to be very impressed, but you know, we'll see.
Just beginning.
Any other questions? All in favor of resolution 2018-9, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Jennifer, I have a notice prepared. I'll email to you. It doesn't have to be published until July 12th.
Next up is the AT&T contract renewals. Just a real quick rundown on this. The contract's up with our AT&T. To give you a brief history, we thought we had other options with another provider that was going to be a financial savings to us. After investigation at this time, it doesn't appear that that's going to be a possibility to save any money with them. So this is just a request to renew the contracts with AT&T for 3 more years. 3 more years. Somebody else is going to have to tell you how much because I can't see it. So. You know the dollar amounts.
Actually, it's like a rate
Per thing.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd move to approve the AT&T agreement.
This is the one that we addressed last meeting.
Two sold contracts. AT&T has promised me this.
These are the final 2.
Yes.
But yes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bain, second by Commissioner Fry to approve the AT&T contracts renewals. Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. on to other business. Anything on the other business from you gentlemen? Nothing? That takes us down to public comment. Anything on public comment? If you have anything, step to the podium, state your name, your address. There's a 3-minute time limit.
Rick DeWitt, 6273 West, 575 South, Crawfordsville. First thing, I want to bring up the property rights resolution that was presented earlier in the year. Second thing is basically a public notice. The last 2 commissioners' meetings are available on YouTube. This one will be available in a couple days, and also getting the county council on there also. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned, thank you.